Good afternoon, this is Miss Estes, and we are going to work on classifying shapes. You can group polygons or closed figures with straight sides by their attributes. Some attributes of polygons are the number of sides or angles they have. When you place figures in a group, you can form a category and one or more subcategories. You can use a hierarchy to order groups of figures. The top of the hierarchy shows the category for the most general group. As you go down a hierarchy, you can see how the subcategories are related. Diagrams can show the hierarchy of categories and subcategories. The Venn diagram at the right shows the relationship between polygons, quadrilaterals, and rectangles. The diagram shows that all rectangles are quadrilaterals, but that not all quadrilaterals are rectangles. The diagram also shows that all quadrilaterals are polygons, but that not all polygons are quadrilaterals. So because this rectangle oval is inside, totally inside the quadrilateral oval, is why we know that all rectangles are quadrilaterals. But it doesn't work the other way around. Same thing here, all quadrilaterals are polygons because that quadrilateral oval is totally inside that polygon oval. So our I can statement is I can understand that attributes belonging to a category of two-dimensional figures also belong to all subcategories of that category. I can classify two-dimensional shapes in a hierarchy based on properties. So we're going to take a look at some shapes here, and we're going to talk about whether or not they have congruent sides, whether they have parallel lines, or if we can find right angles. So if we look at the parallelogram, we need to see if parallelograms have congruent sides. And by congruent, we mean same size, same shape. So if we look at, or that they're equal. So if we look at the parallelogram, one thing I noticed is that this top side and this bottom side seem to be the same length. Same thing with the side on the left and the side on the right. So we can say that it has two pairs congruent sides. All right. So if we take a look at parallel lines, do we see any parallel lines? When we're talking about parallel means that they are the same distance apart and that they will always stay that same distance apart as long as the lines extend. So we can see that yes, this top and bottom are parallel and the two sides are parallel. So we also have two pair of parallel sides. And the last thing we want to look at is, does the parallelogram have any right angles? Well, we know that a right angle is a 90-degree angle. It looks like a shape of an L. And if we look at the parallelogram, we are not seeing any right angles. We can say that there are none. So let's look at our rectangle. Does the rectangle have congruent sides? Are the opposite sides the same length? Yes, because the top and the bottom are parallel, or the top and the bottom are congruent, and the left and the right are congruent. So that's two pairs. So just like the parallelogram, we can say that it has two pairs of congruent sides. All right, what about parallel lines? If we look at the rectangle, does the rectangle have parallel lines? So yes, the top and the bottom are parallel, and the left and the right are parallel. So again, we have, just like the parallelogram, we have two pairs of parallel sides. All right. And last thing we want to look at is, does the rectangle have right angles? So if we look at the rectangle, I see one right angle, two, three, four. So it has four right angles. All right, next we have a rhombus. We have to first decide if the rhombus has any congruent sides. Are the sides, the opposite sides, the same length? So we can see across top and bottom, and then left and right, they do seem to be the same length. So we have two pairs, congruent sides. All right. What about parallel lines? Do we see any parallel lines? Will they remain the same distance apart? So we have parallel, these two are parallel, and these two are parallel. So again, we have two pair of parallel sides. And last, we want to see if they have any right angles. So looking at this rhombus, I notice that there are no right angles. I do see acute angles and obtuse angles, but I do not see right angles. So we are just going to say there are none. All right, what about the square? Does the square have congruent sides? If we look at the square, we can see across top and bottom are congruent, and side are congruent. Actually, all four sides are congruent because we know that a square has four sides of equal length. So we can say all sides congruent. All right, what about parallel sides? So yes, our top and bottom are parallel, and the left and right are parallel. So we have two pair of parallel sides. And last, we need to look at right angles. Do we see right angles in our square? Yes, because a square has four right angles. And last, we have a trapezoid. So the first thing we're looking for are congruent sides. Does the trapezoid have any congruent sides? Well, this type of trapezoid, we see two sides, or one pair, that are congruent, but not necessarily every trapezoid. But since we do see it in this trapezoid, we'll say one pair of congruent sides. All right, what about parallel sides? Well, that's one thing that we do know about a trapezoid, is that a trapezoid only has one pair of parallel sides. That's one of the attributes that makes it a trapezoid. So it has one pair of parallel sides. And what about right angles? Do we see any right angles here? Nope, we don't see any here. Not necessarily in this trapezoid, but it is possible to have a right trapezoid. But since we don't see any here, we'll put. Okay, so now I have to complete each sentence using all or some to make each statement true. So squares have blank of the attributes of rhombuses. So we know that rhombuses have 4 sides. Does a square have 4 sides? Yes. We know that it has congruent sides because all sides are equal. And we know that that works for our square also. And it has 2 pairs of parallel sides, which a square has also. So we can say that squares have all of the attributes of rhombuses. B, rhombuses have blank of the attributes of parallelograms. Well, we know that parallelograms have 4 sides. They have 2 pairs of congruent sides. They have 2 pairs of parallel sides. So yes, rhombuses have all of the attributes of parallelograms. Parallelograms have blank of the attributes of rhombuses. So we just said that rhombuses have all of the attributes of parallelograms, but does it work the other way around? We can say that parallelograms have some, but they do not have all, because rhombuses we know have 4 equal sides, just like the square, but the parallelogram does not necessarily always have 4 equal sides. So we are going to say some, but not all. So a hierarchy orders categories from most general to most specific. So the very outside oval is the most general, and as we move in, we're getting more specific. Ovals A through D in this Venn diagram list attributes of 4 categories of quadrilaterals. Use the terms below to fill in the names of the subcategories from most general to most specific. So we're using rectangles, squares, and parallelograms. So if we look, A, 4 sides. If it only has 4 sides, if that's the only attribute it has, then it is a quadrilateral. All quadrilaterals have 4 sides. Then if we get a little more specific, if it's a quadrilateral and it has 2 pairs of parallel sides, if we look at our options, yes, that would be parallelogram. Yes, squares have 2 pairs of parallel sides, and rectangles also have 2 pairs of parallel sides, but they have a little bit more specific attributes to go along with them also. So parallelogram would be the best choice here. So as we move to the next oval, we see 4 right angles. So we have rectangles and we have squares that are left. So which would be a parallelogram that takes it one step further that has 4 right angles? Correct, that means it's a rectangle. All right, so a rectangle is a parallelogram. A rectangle is also a quadrilateral because this rectangle oval is inside both of those ovals. So for D, 4 sides of equal length, we know that squares have 4 sides of equal length. So square is going to have to go in this last oval. So squares have 4 sides of equal length. They have 4 right angles. They have 2 pairs of parallel sides, and they have 4 sides. So squares have all of these attributes. That's why I said it's the most specific. So we would go quadrilaterals, parallelogram, rectangle, and squares. Easy as ABC.